The Battle of the Little Bighorn was fought in 1876 in the Montana Territory. Since the 1840s, America had been rapidly expanding westwards, but the new settlers soon clashed with natives living in the Great Plains. To prevent further conflict, the US government signed the Fort Laramie Treaty with multiple tribes. The treaty was written in English and not fully understood or agreed by all tribes, and both the US and natives violated the treaty. The American army built forts in native territory, and the natives attacked the fort and killed travellers. A second Fort Laramie Treaty was agreed, establishing the Great Sioux Reservation, but groups of Lakota and Cheyenne, led by Chief Sitting Bull, refused to join the reservation and were considered hostile. In 1874, gold was discovered in the Black Hills, which fell within the territory of the Sioux Reservation. A government offer to buy the Black Hills was rejected, but prospectors soon began arriving, and soldiers were sent to attack any natives not on the reservation. Sitting Bull's camp was by the Little Bighorn River, and not on the reservation, when it was spotted by US soldiers. On the day of the battle, the natives had around 3,000 warriors. The US soldiers, commanded by General Custer, numbered just under 400 men. The battle started when Custer and his scouts saw the native village from a high vantage point. Fearing that he'd been discovered and the encampment would escape, Custer decided it must be attacked immediately. He divided his forces into 4 battalions. One battalion was used to secure the pack train of supplies. Another battalion, led by Captain Benteen, was ordered on a scouting mission to ensure that there were no other native camps in the area that could potentially attack their rear. The 2 remaining battalions, led by General Custer and Major Reno, made their way to the Little Bighorn Valley. Custer ordered Reno to attack, and his battalion crossed the Little Bighorn River and made their way towards the village. As Reno's battalion approached, the number of mounted warriors began to increase. Reno had assumed that Custer's battalion would be joining him in support, but he had moved his men to the high ground. With no assistance from Custer, and needing a defensive formation, Reno ordered his men to dismount and form a long skirmish line, before opening fire. Native warriors, armed with rifles and arrows and tomahawks, raced out to defend the village. Custer had been observing the situation, and to support Reno, he decided to attempt an envelopment of the village by attacking at the opposite end. Under attack, Reno's battalion was involved in fierce fighting, but the native warriors greatly outnumbered the US Army soldiers. When Reno's left flank came under pressure, his men retreated further back to avoid being enveloped. He created a new defensive position within the trees and near the river. Despite the cover provided by the trees, Reno was unable to stop the continued attack of the native warriors. Custer had been informed of Reno's struggle, and to offer assistance, he again divided his soldiers, with 2 companies moving down towards the river in an attempt to draw attention away from Reno's soldiers. Custer, with 3 companies, remained on the high ground. Reno was concerned his position was being surrounded, and ordered a retreat to the high ground. In the confusion, a rearguard defense had not been planned, and chased by native warriors, some of Reno's battalion were killed as they tried to cross the river back to the high ground. With reports that US soldiers had been seen elsewhere, the natives returned to the village. The 2 companies that were moving down to the river soon came under fire from natives hiding in the long grass, and joined by more warriors that had just returned from fighting Reno, the natives started advancing. The increasing numbers and intense attack forced the American soldiers to retreat back up to the high ground. The native warrior Crazy Horse began leading a party of fighters downstream in an attempt to envelop the US soldiers. Custer ordered his men into defensive formations to hold back the advancing warriors, with a further group kept just behind in reserve. Custer continued looking for a location to cross the river. The first defence, consisting of a short skirmish line, came under attack but was quickly overwhelmed, and the formation broke. The second defensive line now came under intense pressure, and the warriors were attacking from multiple directions. Custer returned to the high ground and sent a small group of soldiers to prevent warriors advancing from another direction. After fierce fighting, the second defensive formation was suffering severe losses, and many started to fall back to the reserve line. Crazy Horse had successfully made his way behind the American position. As the native warriors were beginning to attack the reserve soldiers, Crazy Horse joined in and smashed straight into the back of them. His envelopment left the soldiers completely surrounded. Many were killed, and others left the formation attempting to reach Custer's position. The remnants of Custer's command gathered on a small hill. They used the bodies of their horses as a barricade, but outnumbered and attacked from all sides, Custer and the last of his men were all killed. Benteen's battalion had appeared just after Reno had retreated to the high ground. Benteen decided to stay and support Reno. After defeating Custer, the native warriors began launching small attacks against Reno and Benteen. The two battalions formed a defensive circle, and for the rest of the day, native shooters hidden from view were able to fire at them. The Americans suffered losses, and only with the arrival of further American soldiers did the shooting stop. At the end of the battle, the US Army had lost about 280 soldiers. Native losses numbered around 160. This was a victory for the natives. The US government retaliated to this defeat by intensifying military action against the Lakota and Sioux. The Fort Laramie Treaty was repealed and millions of acres, including the Black Hills, were seized. Sitting Bull fled to Canada. After a brief appearance in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, he returned to the United States. He remained an influential figure and was killed during another native uprising.